All right, everybody. Whoa, nice loud microphone. That'll get your attention. Everybody, please have a seat. This session actually really kicks off. We had a board meeting and some chapter chair stuff the other day, but this is we're about to kick off the real meat of the annual dinner and annual meetings that we have here in New York. So I'm very excited today to have everybody getting together. By the way, if you have not met me yet, my name is Richard Garriott. I'm the second of the Richard presidents, and nice to be with you. I actually wasn't scheduled to be up here, but I wanted to do an introduction of my predecessor, Richard Weiss, who, along with Joe Rohde and some others, helped kick off what has brought all of you here with the Explorers Club 50. And the reason why I wanted to say something about this in advance is that, hopefully you all already know enough about the club to love the club, and if you haven't yet, please go explore this place from stem to stern. But you really are the most important thing happening within the fellowship of the Explorers Club is the Explorers Club 50. And my predecessor and his team envisioned this, brought it together, have brought you all here. I think really when we think about the Explorers Club and its trajectory going to the future, it would be very hard to argue there is any other initiative, at least within my tenure as a member of this organization, that is more important, and that you all are so incredibly important to this club, to the field of exploration, and to the future of this planet. And so thank you all for being here, and I'd like to introduce my predecessor, Richard Weiss, who helped really get this all going. Richard.
That's Richard. Thank you. How many of you are here in New York for the first time? A couple of you. And how many of you are EC50 people here? Wow, quite a few. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick background on how I stumbled into the Explorers Club, because I've heard this term used over and over and over again. In the mid-1980s, I used to go to lectures in New York City. I'd go to Lincoln Center, I'd go to Carnegie Hall, I'd go to all these places, and then I wandered into this place. And I remember the lecture was so random, the black bears of northern New Jersey. But in the corner, I heard about some guy talking about spear tips in the Amazon, another guy who had actually gone on a spacewalk. And I thought, these are my people. This is my tribe. And so I think a lot of people, when they think of tribes or their people, there's sort of a sameness, at least from a external standpoint. So the EC50 really is the whole idea that exploration is this wonderful tapestry with many different threads. And during the COVID period, we had a chance to think of who we wanted to be and what an explorer was. And, so this is the fourth class. And I'm just going to take you a little bit through the rundown. Oh, wait a second. Very busy guy. I have 3 teenagers. I'm sure somebody's credit card is maxed out or something like that. So that's what my life of exploration. If you haven't had kids yet, man, it's the greatest expedition you'll ever be on. But the whole point of really this sort of minute-ish at the mic is for you to introduce yourself to others. And what the outcome we're hoping for is that you find a sense of community, you find other people doing things that you're doing or maybe add to it. And so take note of those people. Your class of 2024, some of the class of 23 and 22 are here as well. But reach out and say hi to somebody, because chances are they might be new to this building and not know anybody. Okay, I want to introduce you to who I consider really the chief architect of the EC50. When we got that committee going and we decided who we want to be and how we're going to do it, Joe Rohde, who was the chief Imagineer at Disney, came in. And Joe, without stealing your thunder of how you made us all think, I love this term, soft friction. He said, we want people who are different on that committee. We want people to disagree, not in that they're undermining each other, but they're just going to bring a completely different perspective. And so the soft friction is really what started molding what we do. All of you have been selected because we think you have not only great potential as explorers, but great potential to amplify that exploration. The whole idea of communication is becoming more and more important. So without me talking further, because it's a skill set of Richard's that you get a mic in your hand and you go, ba, 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 ba. That's why they call it the gift of gab. I'd like to introduce Joe Rohde. Joe?
Thank you, Richard. This whole EC50 thing is really my favorite part of the year, my favorite thing to do, my favorite part of the club. I very much enjoy it, and I really believe in it. I think it's very important to constantly refresh your way of seeing. I'm an artist. As a member of the Explorers Club, I myself am one of these sort of tangential people who might not at first thought be the natural person. You'd think, oh, this person should be in the Explorers Club. But by being in the Explorers Club, I myself have been able to bring a kind of a point of view to this process, and then to see how this process can continue to inform a sense of self-identity. We see in terms of who we are. And so when we add new eyes to ourself, when we add new perceptions to ourself, we're not only changing the way in which we see the world, but we're actually changing the way we can look at ourself. And I think one of the most important arenas of exploration that the EC50 brings is the exploration of the Explorers Club itself. What it can mean, what it can be, what it can do, how it can see the world when it sees the world with these new eyes that in many cases are unexpected or brought in from really unusual axes. And so for that, I know that, of course, it's very exciting to be here and to come here and to see the club. And I assure you that as a person who came into the club as a way very similar to the EC50, sort of a tangential person, I was made to feel welcome. I was made to feel valued. I was made to feel that the work that I did was important and meaningful to the club. And I hope that all of you will have that same experience, and strongly encourage you to seek out unusual lateral connections within this club, not just the linear connections of like, I am a marine biologist, wouldn't it be great if I knew more marine biologists and maybe someone who did underwater sonar work, but lateral connections to people you would not normally think might be relevant to your work, and in so doing to really begin that process of exploration of what it means to be in the Explorers Club. Thank you very much.
You can imagine some of the discussions we had at the table. So, Joe, you're an acquired taste. I was more the Stanley Kowalski, like, and obviously spoken very well. Just to give you, and not to put pressure on any of you speaking, because I always think when you speak, just pretend you're over a fire. But this lectern, which you will have your hands on, I have seen Neil Armstrong's hands on here. I have seen Buzz Aldrin's hands on here. I've seen Jane Goodall's hands on here. So, you know, some of the greatest explorers that you've heard of have had their hands. Now, hopefully we'll be able to say that about one of you in the not so distant future. So, Rebecca, I think you're the first one to head of. Brooke, you're going to have a picture of somebody. Wow, that was the cover of our book. So Rebecca, I'm gonna hand it to you. And is it easier to have the mic at the?
This is great. Thank you.
Yeah. Look, be a little free form, because I really want you to feel not the constraints of formality here. You know, this is your tribe. You know, if you want to dance around, or you know. Well, we'll have the next person will give you a little about dancing. So anyhow.
So the last time I was here at this podium, EC was hosting an event with my organization, Root Studio, called Bok Joy. And Bok Joy is a fashion collection that was co-created with indigenous communities in Asia. And we were like, what if we could use fashion as a way, and the buzz behind it, to basically really bring out amazing indigenous values and ways of being and making. So talking about lateral thinking, right? Like, I was like, yeah, we want to have bok choy, and we also want to and the food was bok choy themed. We had bok choy cocktails. We had agricultural crops that inspired the cocktail menu. I think the cocktail menu was gonna be great this weekend as well. But it was, I think EC and being part of EC50 and being right here 1 year ago exactly was the first time I actually came to the club. So I was like, what is this space? Like, I usually am just in Brooklyn, but being here and realizing this is an amazing community of people who are artists, who are lateral thinkers, who are kind of weird, and to be able to say, hey, like, I'm in a very different part of the neighborhood, but I feel a sense of kindred belonging here, that we can come together. So yeah, I'll just share a little bit about my work really quickly. I know it's supposed to be a minute, but I run an organization called Root Studio. We connect indigenous and rural communities globally with rich cultural artistic traditions and practices and create IP licensing rights for their works into fashion and retail. So we run an archive that's like Getty Images and what Getty did for photographers, but creating the same rights for amazing art forms and tracing it back to those artists and communities. And then we would partner, when you think about what does that mean? If you see all the amazing artwork that's on clothes and what ends up on the runways, we often are the people who are trying to advocate and get artists and communities directly behind that work, and to groups like Columbia Sportswear, Patagonia, Chanel, Cartier, so that we could actually bridge cultures and reimagine, instead of it holding communities in preservation, seeing them as part of the future, as their values and their sustainability to set the future of where fashion is. So last thing I'll show you is, like, for instance, this is how we work. People are like, what does that really mean? This is, I spent more than a decade, people are like, how did you end up in fashion? How did you end up in working with indigenous communities? Being at EC is really special because I started off as a conservationist, doing a lot of work in India on human-animal conflict and coexistence. And while following and mapping these animals around, I realized, I think, from a purist conservation perspective, we're focused on the animal, but when in fact they're part of an ecosystem. They're part of working with communities that have these values that have lived in coexistence and harmony. But a lot of these communities have also seen a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that are happening in terms of their way of life, and they don't really value their own cultural traditions and practices. So Subhasha Miliar, who is an artist from the Bhil tribe in Madhya Pradesh, he painted this, but he can't, as with a lot of the indigenous artists I meet, they can't get it sold. They don't really have access to these markets, and they often find their work co-opted and end up on a shoe somewhere. So we're saying, like, how do we get this to the forefront of fashion? So, fashion show. There you go. So we were like, we can reimagine these surfaces and as museums of anthropology, culture, and also creating tangible livelihoods for these communities. A lot of our communities, through their involvement with Root Studio, have tripled their annual household income. Their work you can find them all over REI. We started a lot in the outdoors industry because of, I guess I'm kind of earthy in that way, but also in luxury fashion. And we have a limited amount of this stock in the Explorers Club store upstairs. And yeah, so if you're interested in supporting our artists and communities, go check out our selection in the store. Or I know a lot of explorers here also work in tangential with indigenous communities, talk to us in our community organizing team. And we're also on a journey to see how we can bridge cultural industries more globally. So thank you so much.
Testing. Oh, there it is. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ben, and I'm an acoustic biologist. I travel the world recording animal sounds in rare and endangered ecosystems. and I study their significance in human culture. But when I want to share my research with the world, I become a wildlife DJ. Humans are a part of nature, and we share this planet with so many amazing species. Take this empress cicada from Borneo, the loudest insect in the world. It's pretty groovy, right? A little closer to home, we have the remix of a northern mockingbird and the high note of a field cricket. Did you hear that? It's like we don't even need a beat. We're listening to the Sonoran Desert in the American Southwest. That kick drum is a javelina. Amazing, amazing. We also have cactus wrens, quail, vultures, you name it. And of course, we can't forget the ocean. If we dive beneath the waves, we can enjoy the slat bass of a humpback whale. And of course, if you've ever gone scuba diving or snorkeling, you can recognize that tinkling sound, that crackling sound. That's parrotfish chipping away at their coral with the sharp beaks. Let's bring these voices together in a symphony that never sleeps. Thank you. I know we only have a couple minutes. I'll just say music is one of the many things that my research group uses to make conservation more inclusive. I never imagined that I could live a life that combines my passions for nature and music production, but here I am getting to share this with all of you today, and I'm humbled and grateful to be here with so many amazing people who are pushing boundaries both within themselves and the world. My studio and research team collaborates with local and indigenous communities to document pressing environmental issues through media. And then we use that media to publish research, particularly social science and anthropology, but also bioacoustics. And then we create music, art, touring photo exhibits, and then analyze those materials so we're living in a perpetual cycle of curiosity and discovery. Our next project is based on the songbird trade in Indonesia. It's capturing 5 years of research with local communities in Yogyakarta, and if you'd like to learn more about it, come find me this weekend. Thank you very much.
Hello, Michelle.
Thank you. Of course, they made me follow that. My name is Michelle, last name Gad, and I really love fat gray animals. That's what I do. You give me elephants, Asian elephants, African, doesn't matter. Black rhino, white rhino, greater one-horned rhino, they're okay too. Even throw in a hippo. I haven't gotten to manatees yet, but manatees, I'm coming for you. And what I do is I identify abandoned or bankrupt or degraded and decrepit land in Africa, and I find very generous donors to buy it, and we're trying to put it all back together. So what we're looking to do is resecure, restore, rehabilitate, and reintroduce. Thus far, we have 1 million intact acres in the 5 years I've been there. We have over 300 black rhinos, so that is almost 10% of the world population on our private land. So I have 600 employees that I represent here today, all of them African. I'm the lone traveler. An awesome team that has really made it possible. So what we're just looking to do is to put it all back together and make ecosystems function again. Once again, my name is Michelle. Friends call me Michelle-elephant. Last name Gad. Gadfly, Gadabout, Gadzooks, whatever works. Thanks for having me.
Oh, just a quick programming note. Tonight, for the EC50 honorees, there's a cocktail party. Just so there's no confusion on the time, it's at 4 p.m. And then you can come back here where there's a new member reception as well, which is a lot of fun. Both are fun. but just so you affix those times to your head. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here. My name is Brittany Schmidt. Currently, I'm a professor at Cornell. And so this robot here in the background, so this is from from where I was writing all of the details for our applications this year. So this is Fimble Ice Shelf in Antarctica. And if you were to follow the prime meridian down, right to where it hits Antarctica is basically where this photo is taken. And so the robot here in the background is an under ice robot. So we drill very small holes through ice shelves or hopefully one day through ice sheets, and then take this vehicle down underneath it to explore. So it's one aspect of our research team. And so here we're working with kind of an international collaboration of folks from, led by Norway, folks from my team, also the British Antarctic Survey, and members of France. So we had kind of a multi-institute, multinational group of people trying to get under the ice to find out what's going on there. So I started as a planetary scientist, so I'm a European, thinking about the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, these alien worlds that have really thick ice shells and deep oceans underneath them. And one day we'd love to send something like this there. So this is IceFin, which is our kind of proto-spacecraft. So it's originally kind of a NASA-funded program, but one of the things that you find out when you get to Antarctica is that it is incredibly powerful and incredibly fragile. And so what we're trying to do is kind of bring the perspective of how we explore space to our own backyard and to try to learn more about what we can do, hopefully to save it or at least to improve the future. So in some of the details that we're doing is to map things like temperature and salinity and oxygen underneath the water column, and that's kind of like a fingerprint of the water. It tells you everything that's happened to the ocean since basically that water mass formed. So one of the things that we can see a lot of course, is melting. So we've been trying to kind of do this both for Earth and planetary exploration. The way I kind of would explain it is that we were driving cars on the Earth for 100 years before we sent one to Mars. So it's the kind of things that we're trying to do here is that we might get further afield. And in the meantime, trying to kind of double dip, make sure that the investments we're making in space exploration are also helping us here on this planet. So it's a real honor to be here today. Thanks so much, very much.
Gosh, that's a really old photo of me. I am studying wasps in that box there, and I'm going to tell you why I study wasps. This is actually at Barra Colorado Island in Panama, and I've put some bird boxes out on some sticks to try and attract social wasps. And probably most of you spend most of your time in life trying to avoid attracting wasps. Well, I'm the total opposite. And actually, from hearing what I've heard already in this room today, I feel that I feel kindred spirit because I am the weird one who studies wasps. And by all accounts, you guys are all quite weird too, which is fantastic. Anyway, my name is Serian. I'm a behavioural ecologist at University College London. I'm a professor there. So I wanted to mention 4 4 words in my 1 minute, so it's about 15 seconds a word, that I'd love to chat to you about later. It's natural history, biodiversity crisis, cheerleading, and wasps. And they all connect. So natural history is the oldest of all sciences. If it weren't for people like Aristotle, who was the fantastic naturalist, if his observations, his descriptions of nature, people like him provide us with that body, that framework from which all of science, to be honest, whether you're a planetary scientist or a medical scientist or whatever you are, natural history really matters. And I think we overlook that and we forget that. And about 200 years ago, until 200 years ago, we used to really value the natural world and people who would go out and study the natural world. But 200 years ago, with the instrumentation and the institutionalization of science, there was a big schism, and the natural historians were kind of thrown out of science and regarded as just the amateurs who didn't really do real serious science. And I think that today we are still living with those remnants. And the reason is that we've fallen out of love with nature, we've become derailed from nature, and that is one of the reasons why we find ourselves now in this horrendous biodiversity crisis, which of course underpins and runs in parallel with the climate crisis. And so we need to somehow get back in step with nature. We need to re-embrace nature. We need to learn to love and appreciate nature, not just for the things that it gives us, not just for the ways that we exploit it and how we can get more out of nature. We have to realize that it's nature on which we depend for our support systems, for our food, for our health, for our happiness, for our welfare. So where does that all link to wasps? Well, I think, there are scientists all over the world who are really making big differences with biodiversity science. And maybe some of you in the room are part of these big, shiny new interdisciplinary centres which are addressing biodiversity science. And that is brilliant. But what about all the other people? What about the rest of the world who are not in those interdisciplinary centres? The public, the general people, who need to get back in touch with nature because everybody needs to feel that love. Everybody needs to do their bit. And that's where I'm coming into cheerleading. Okay, we all need to be cheerleaders for nature. And I had the most fantastic morning. I flew in last night from London, walked through Central Park this morning, and I was literally flabbergasted at pretty much the only people I saw, and I saw a lot of people, all of them had binoculars around their necks. What is it about New York and Central Park? It's just like teeming with birds and bird watchers, which is absolutely fantastic. Those are the cheerleaders for birds. We all love birds. They're beautiful, they're pretty, they're easy to spot. I began my life as a naturalist, as a bird watcher. But there are plenty of cheerleaders for the charismatic, cute, useful organisms. We need cheerleaders for those organisms, those facets of life which we don't like. Okay, the slime molds in the soil and the mites that live on those beautiful birds in Central Park. And that's what I am. I am a cheerleader for one of the most unloved creatures on the planet. Wasps. I do have to just say, show of hands, who likes wasps here? Okay, you're quite an unusual audience. I would have expected maybe one or two hands. I love wasps. Wasps are nature's pest controllers. They are pollinators. They are decomposers. They are recyclers. They are the little things that contribute to running the planet. Everybody talks about if the bees died out, humans only have 4 years left because bees are important pollinators. If the wasps die out, we don't really know what will happen, but we're pretty sure that we'll be inundated with other insects and pests. So wasps are such a critical top predator in all ecosystems. And lots of the research that we are now doing in my lab is not only looking at the behavioral ecology and the genomics of these insects, but also looking at their role as potential biocontrol agents in sustainable farming. So we're working with farmers in Africa and in South America, particular subsistence level farmers, to see whether we can help them harness the predatory power of the social wasps, the wasps that everyone hates because they do sting, whether we can harness those powers to exploit as pest controllers. And so that's one of the sort of the anthropological angle here that I'd love to talk to some of the social scientists in the room. Okay, so I hope that it has shown you how natural history, biodiversity crisis, cheerleading and wasps all connect together, and I'd love to chat to you about that later. Thank you.
I guess when I go back to Connecticut, I should think about wasps differently. But they all dress kind of like me. No. I'm not a wasp. Actually, the term was coined first in the 1960s by a University of Pennsylvania professor, Digsby Bozell, who wrote a book called The White Anglo Ruling Class, just another wasp. There you go. Who knew? Hey, I just want to recognize two people before Jason gets up here. You know, every year we have members who nominate many people. And Joe and Milbury, are you both here? Please stand up. Milbury Polk. Is Joe here? Joe? Not here. Oh, anyhow. Oh, there we go. Joe Grabowski. Okay, congratulations.
Hello, folks. One time I was on an expedition, and I was walking up this hill. It was a beautiful day, and it a very serene moment out on the land, and we had a photographer there with us. And as I was walking up, I was taking in the scenery, and then a wasp flew by. And I skillfully avoided it. Later that night, the photographer, he said, I was taking a picture of you walking up this hill, and it was a very beautiful moment. But then you did something. And he said, I can't really describe it other than a combination of yoga and a jig. So, I'm an expedition leader with Adventure Canada. I'm also Inuk from Nunatsiavut in northern Labrador. And for me, my entry into this kind of world of explorers started when I was a teenager. I grew up hunting and fishing with my father, and we also acted as guides for people doing research in the Torngat Mountains in Nunatsiavut. So we would take out these scientists and geologists, people that I would have considered explorers. And sometimes I was referred to in their work as our Inuit guide, which for me was, it really got me curious about this whole world, because they would be doing this research papers, and I started polar bear monitoring when I was about 13, and it was my father would give me the gun, and these people doing all the research, he would say, make sure these white people don't die. And so through this work, as a polar bear monitor, I started working in the expedition cruise industry, which is something I didn't quite know existed, but it really melded well into my lifestyle of both being working in the outdoors, but then also working as a cultural educator. And so much of my work is around people and cultural communication, intercultural communication, because being an Inuk and working in this field with people that are wanting to learn, you started to realize the huge gaps in understanding of how people communicate, which then made it very obvious there are very little Inuit working as expedition leaders. You see that as like, the people who would be here at this club versus I think of like Eli Mikaratsuk from my hometown, who knows very little English. These people with enormous skill and knowledge, but would defer to these people that they see as expedition leaders. And it got me focusing on how can we kind of address this. So through the work with Adventure Canada and the government of Nunavut and the Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators, I started a program called Naluneksit, which is translates to deconfusers, or people who inform. And through this program, I'm actually traveling to Iqaluit next week to pull this off. We have about 12 Inuit who come and take this program a year, where they are learning the how to be guides and educators. And to do that, we have to do, have any of you taken cultural competency courses? Yeah? I have to do that in reverse. I'm teaching them how, I'm going to say, Khaldunak, or Southerners, think and communicate. And it's quite a funny process. And Naluneksit, we take 12 participants a year, and they're sent out to then become guides and getting training, working also with expedition leaders in the industry to provide that training. And I was very lucky to have Stefan Kinberg, who I don't think is in the room, who was my mentor, to become an expedition leader. And the plan is to get more Inuit involved and eventually take over the concept of what exploration actually is. Thanks.
Wow. Jason, really well said. I mean, there's between 6,000 and 7,000 languages spoken on Earth. And you could see even here in America, speaking mostly just English, how differently people think. So you imagine he's throwing a lot of different cultures and languages. And, you know, I'm already speaking to the converted. We need as many ambassadors speaking as many languages through identifiable rhythms of speaking that a larger population needs. So, Jason, thank you very much for really illuminating what the and you got the term WASP in there too, so I appreciate that. Okay, Alejandro. Congratulations.
I'm so happy to see so many of my friends here. It's one of the best things of being in the club. So yeah, I'm actually from Venezuela. I moved to Ecuador when I was about 14 years old. And it was always my passion to try to discover some new species. So yeah, that's essentially what I do. I go into remote places and try to discover something new. I guess this is a feeling that many people in this room share. The idea of going to a place and trying to see and discover something that no one else had ever seen. That's what motivated me to become a biologist. Now, there's another thing that many people don't recognize about becoming a scientist, a researcher, and a taxonomist. So I deal with the discovery of the new species. But something interesting, although it can be quite of a tedious work sometimes in the museum and in the lab, one of the precious things of being able to discover a new species is that you can get to name it, you choose the name. So you don't get many opportunities to enjoy yourself as a taxonomist, but that's one. So what I try to do sometimes is to name the species that I discover in honor of people that I admire, that I like, or who I feel extremely grateful for. Over the course of my lifetime, I have discovered 35 new species, mostly amphibians, reptiles, as you can see here. And actually, 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to name a new species after the grant project that supported my work in Ecuador. So I'm extremely grateful for all the people who are part of the club for making this happen. And actually, there's a very special person among the crowd today that I'm going to actually name a new species in honor after. So I will be breaking this surprise a little bit later. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Caitlin Bowman-Adamczyk, and I'm an oceanographer in Santa Cruz, California. My favorite place to explore is out in the middle of the ocean. Someone was asking me where I do my fieldwork today, and I was struggling to explain it because it's not close to any landmass or island. It's really far offshore, hundreds, thousands of miles offshore. Most of my work has focused on understanding how mercury cycles through the global ocean. Mercury is emitted to the environment through natural sources like volcanoes and anthropogenic sources like coal-fired power plants. And once it's in the atmosphere, mercury can stay in the air for up to a year, and that means that it can travel across the globe. So my work has taken me across the Atlantic Ocean, big sections of the Pacific Ocean, all the way up to the Arctic Ocean and the North Pole. There's mercury at the North Pole. It really is everywhere. I pivoted a couple years ago and started working for the US Geological Survey, and now I spend a lot of time thinking about the seafloor. I've had the absolute privilege of diving in Alvin, which is a deep sea submersible, and I use remotely operated vehicles to study the seafloor. In 2022, I was part of an environmental monitoring campaign where I got to follow around a pilot deep sea nodule mining expedition. So there's a lot of interest in mining the seafloor in really remote places of our ocean. And I spent 6 weeks following around this 700-foot mining vessel, collecting samples, trying to understand potential environmental impacts. And most recently, I was part of an expedition where we discovered a brand new hydrothermal vent in the Western Galapagos Spreading Center. I'm simplifying how we found it, but at the end, it really did come down to following a trail of tiny squat lobsters. So the new vent is named Trail of Crabs. I'm happy to share more on that story later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tanya? Tanya? Oh, Tanya's coming. You're my cousin Nina's friend. Yeah. My cousin Nina is the principal investigator on the Mars rover ChemCam?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you got it right.
I know. Okay. Nice to finally meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya Harrison, and I am a professional Martian. I've spent the last 15 years working on rocks and robots on the Red Planet, so kind of the stuff that Brittany Schmidt alluded to. And when I was a kid, I actually dreamt of being part of the Explorers Club, but I never thought I would be here because my dreams were to climb Mount Everest and go to Antarctica, and I wanted to do all these things. And then when I was 14 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare degenerative condition called ankylosing spondylitis that slowly started to take away my ability to walk. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to do any of the things that I wanted to do. I'm not going to be able to live my space dreams. Like, what am I going to do with my life? And spoiler, I managed to do, well, I didn't get to climb Everest or anything like that, but I got to explore through cameras on missions like Mars rovers and satellites orbiting Mars, and eventually the Earth, and now I'm working on cameras on moon missions. But I decided that I really wanted to focus on how can we make the idea of exploration feel more inclusive so that kids like me wouldn't think, well, I can't be an explorer if I can't climb Mount Everest, or I can't go to the bottom of the ocean myself. So a few years ago, I co-founded something called the Z Factor Fellowship, which is designed to pair students from any historically excluded background, including students with disabilities, with paid internships in the aerospace sector. And then we also enable them to run outreach activities so that we're not just giving the opportunity to the one student that gets an internship. It's not just one a year, we place about 20 per year, but we want them to enable their community to come with them, and they get to define that community in any way they see fit. So far, we've had 4 cohorts, and some of those students have gone on to get full-time jobs at NASA. Some of them have gone on to get full-time jobs at pretty well-known space companies, and so it's really incredible to see them doing exactly what we hoped they would do, bringing other people along with them. I also want to make science more accessible at a broader scale, so not just to people with disabilities, but to the general public through combining science with industry to do innovation better, and also to make the general public more curious about science. So I don't want everybody to necessarily be a scientist. We need artists, we need musicians, we need plumbers, we need all of these things. But I think one thing that the world could use, especially right now, is more curiosity. Talk to each other, ask questions, don't be afraid to ask the questions, and just enjoy the world around us and the people that we can have these conversations with a little bit more. And the Explorers Club seems like a really great place to do stuff like that. Thanks.
Martin. Congratulations.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Martin. If I'm at a party, I would probably introduce myself just as a photographer. That's just easier. But now that we have a few more minutes, I can tell you it's a bit more complicated than that. This is me on one of my assignments for National Geographic inside the largest cave in the world. We went not just to do photography, but to actually capture it in a new way. That's what I'm all about. exploring some corners of the earth, sure, but also exploring new formats and new ways to tell stories. I work with 360 photography, 360 video, and now a lot of documentary 3D. How we can go out into the world and capture whole mountains, put them on a memory card, and come back so we can bring those stories to life in different ways. I've already worked with a few of people in this room, and I'm so excited to be here because these technologies and the point we are at in time with, sure we have AI and all those technologies that might go one way or the other for humanity, but also a lot of spectacular tools to make sure we can bring science to people in new ways. I don't think the immersive environments of the future or the educational environments of the future are going to be all about books and still photography and video. It's going to be about stepping into digital worlds. It's going to be about getting people to understand and interact with the world in new ways. That's what I do. That's why I'm so excited to learn about all of the stories of the academics, of the conservationists, and other people in this room, because I want to tell your stories. Good to be here.
And you know, just a quick note for any of you honorees, next year let's pay it forward. You know, let's nominate somebody you find that incredible out there that could use some amplification. And I'll give you a little more about the amplification a little later on.
Hi everyone, my name's Imogen Napper. I'm from the UK, and I look at rubbish, trash, waste. And I've been best described as a plastic detective. So we really live in the plastic age. This is not a great room to show that because there's so much wood in here, but the clothes that you're wearing are plastic elements in our phones, sunglasses, the screen is probably plastic. We make over 400 million tons of plastic every year. 3% of that is expected to go into our ocean, and the majority is single-use plastic. But as a plastic detective, my job is to ask questions of, how is this plastic getting into our environment? What's happening to it? What's the impact? How is it being transported? And most importantly, what are the solutions that we can bring in? So I'm going to take you on a story of me being a plastic detective that's taken me from my house to a major river system, the Ganges, to near the top of Mount Everest, and then into Earth's orbit. So this is going to be quite a quick fire round of my research, so it's going to be quite quick. So we did the first research looking at microbeads in facial scrubs. Can you put up your hands if you ever heard of microbeads? Oh, okay, brilliant. Probably, again, the wrong room to ask this. But no one knew how many could be in one bottle. You wash your face, they go down the drain, potentially through the sewage treatment works, and then into our ocean. We found that 3 million could be in one bottle, thousands on a squirt on your hand. But we took this research to consumers like you and me, who started to boycott the products, and then this research influenced legislation around the world banning them. So it can show how research can have a really powerful voice. Then I did a lot of work looking at washing our clothes, because the majority of the clothes that we wear are made out of plastic. We found that for every clothes wash, about 700,000 fibers come off your clothes. Then, like the microbeads, go down the drain, potentially through our sewage treatment works, and then into our ocean. I then built a washing machine lab, and I spent hours and hours washing clothes, and we tested different solutions that try and capture the fibers. And we found 2 to be statistically significant in reducing the number of fibers. And that's changed legislation in France, where all new washing machines next year will have to come with a filter. So it's the future of washing our clothes. Then we looked at biodegradable plastics, and we just wanted to see what would happen if we put them into the natural environment. So we buried them in the soil, we submerged them in the sea, and after 3 years, we found that these biodegradable plastic bags were still there, and they could still hold a full bag of shopping. So it creates this discussion about greenwashing. And as consumers, we need to have the right information so we can make the right decisions. And we can't go with techno-optimism, where solutions are being given to us, saying that it's going to be for the better of the planet, but it's not working that way. Then it's taken me to the Ganges River, and just as a quick snapshot, we predict that 3 billion microplastics are emitted from a major river system into the ocean every day. But it's more complicated than that because a huge amount is sinking down into the sediment. But there was also tons in the air around the Ganges. And that's coming from our clothes. So as you're sat here, moving and shuffling, fibers are coming off your clothes and coming into the air. And where was this really interesting? Well, we did some research with the National Geographic Mount Everest team, and they got in touch and said, would you like to have snow samples from Mount Everest? And of course, I was like, absolutely yes. We found in all of the samples microplastics, and it correlated with what the climbers were wearing. We found 60 microplastics per litre of snow at Mount Everest Base Camp, but even 10 microplastics per litre of snow just below the summit. We actually got a Guinness World Record for this because it's the highest microplastics that have been recorded on land. But then during COVID, and I had a lot of time to think, I was watching one of my favourite films, which is WALL-E. Can you put up your hands if you've seen WALL-E? It's a scary prediction for the future unless we change our tune. And there's a moment where all of the humans are having to escape Earth because they've made such a mess, and they have to crash through a sea of satellites. And this got me thinking, are we doing this up there as well? So I started to do a little bit of research. Now, satellites are incredibly useful. There's currently about 9,000 satellites in Earth's orbit at the moment, and they help us for a number of different things, from helping me get here today through Google Maps, paying by bank card, and being the eyes in the sky, helping us to monitor our planet. But over the next few years, with mega constellations and a huge rise of satellites going up, there's going to be 42,000 satellites just from SpaceX. And just like busy roads, these satellites can, and they do collide, creating fragments. The more fragments that are up in Earth's orbit, the more likely there's going to be collisions. So we're taking what we know of the oceans, the challenges and the successes that we've had, so we can build a path to a more sustainable Earth's orbit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I have notes. If I don't use notes, I'm going to go way over my allotted time. So I am with an organization called the Climate Music Project, which brings together scientists and composers in a unique collaboration to help audiences understand the nature of the climate crisis and what we can all do to make a difference. So we know that climate change is an urgent issue. The science is abundantly clear. What has been missing is how to communicate scientific insights to a broad and diverse public, including decision makers, in a way that resonates and also motivates meaningful changes in policies and practices. Music is a powerful tool in this context. Each of our compositions, which is a collaboration between scientists and composers enhanced by a visual element, explores a distinct aspect of the climate crisis, from the physical science to human drivers to climate solutions and more. Our music also spans genres from world music to classical. Since our founding in 2015, we have had more than 70 events reaching audiences in over 30 countries, or 30 countries at least, and also partnering on concerts and events with globally leading institutions such as the National Academy of Sciences, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, major universities, and more. Climate change is an urgent challenge, but it's only urgent because we can still do something about it. Music as a vehicle to communicate key scientific insights to a broad public, and this is the key, it's the broad public, has a key role to play in rallying hearts and minds towards rapid climate action. We have an ambitious program for 2024, which includes new music, including a full violin concerto that will premiere with the South Dakota Symphony in Sioux Falls, South Dakota in January of 2024. We also have a new piece we're just starting that will be music you can move your body to, with a really brilliant and upcoming young artist based in LA. We've got we're launching in June of this year a concert series called Eco that will be broadcast across the United States. And finally, we also have a really uplifting climate action campaign centered on young people and their families that we've dubbed Be Cool. Finally, as you might expect from a music-centered organization, we also have a musical logo. I'm going to try to play it for you here real quick. Hang on one second. Let's see, here we go. You know what? I have it on silent. Wait one second. Turn it up. These phones. Here we go. Let's try this again. Okay. So if you're curious about what this music means, come talk to us. My colleague Franz Schulberg is actually also in the room here. We are actively seeking new collaborations and partnerships to help accelerate climate action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we get to Eric, I just want to bring somebody up here, Brooke Vejos, who really has been the director of this program this year, and I know all of you have been in. No, Brooke, come up here. Come up here. You know, people have jobs and people have passions. And for Brooke, this has been more than a job, it's been a passion. We have deliberated over every single one of you. Don't we feel like we know them all so well?
You guys, I was saying this to someone downstairs earlier, but I'm a Taylor Swift fan for all of the people also enjoying the album that came out last night at midnight. But other than that celebrity, you guys are truly like my celebrities here in this club every single day. So Richard, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. But I get nervous, so I don't want to be too long on the mic, but yeah.
It's been interesting because Brooke and I have interesting generational conversations. So Brooke, thank you for making me a better person and not canceling me. So thank you very much. Now, Brooke, in your spirit, I know that Eric is a he, him, but we're going to have a she, her come up because Eric is unable to come here today. So the person who brought Eric to the Explorers Club light is Marie-Célie Guillon. She's from Paris. She was the mayor of the industrial section of Paris, and she brought him to mind. And I know you say you feel nervous speaking English because French is your main language, but I think you have a very cooperative crowd here. Who speaks French here, by the way? Come up. Marie-Célie.
So I'm going to try to speak in English. I'm not Eric. So Eric is this guy here, if you see something. And I'm very impressed to be here because, as you said, Richard, I used to be the CEO of the business district of France, which is La Défense, which is probably the most artificial, far away from nature place in France and maybe in Europe. So it's really strange for me to be here, but I'm very proud to be here to talk about Eric's work and his life story, which is quite extraordinary. We are in 1985. Eric is at that time 25 years old. He's in Colombia, and he went for a hike in the mountains of north of Colombia in Santa Marta. And he's very high in the mountains, and at one point, he's lying down, feeling really sick. He is paralyzed, he's conscious, but actually he's dying because he has a pulmonary edema. That's how we say it in English. And so there's nothing you can do, and he's all alone. He went in those mountains because he had heard that in those mysterious mountains lived a very mysterious and fascinating indigenous people called the Kogis. And he was hoping maybe he would see them, but they're very hard to see because they survived colonization, and they preserve their culture by living very, very high in the mountains and cut from modernity. But, well, anyway, he was dying. But what happened is, was it luck or was it his fate? He was found by 3 Indians, Arhuacos, who picked him up and carried him to the Kogis, who took care of him and saved his life. And that was the beginning of his story with the Kogis. And it influenced his whole life. So they cured him, and when he left, he asked them, "What can I do to thank you?" And they said, "Well, help us to get back our land, our ancestral land, because it has been stolen from us, and we lost the access to our spiritual and sacred sites. And so help us." He was 25. He was a mountain guide. He said, "Of course, not a problem. I'm going to do that." And so he went back to France, and he created an NGO that is called Chendukwa. And ever since, he's been working at trying to help those communities, the Kogis, the Arokos, and the Wiwas, to preserve their culture and to reclaim and get back their land and to regenerate the land, because those lands have been very damaged by various man activities, industrial activities, mining, drug culture, agriculture, all those things. It's a difficult and it's a dangerous activity. And his associate, Colombian associate, was his name was Gentil Cruz, was abducted and assassinated by the paramilitaries like 15 years ago. So it's dangerous. And he's been doing that for all these years. At this stage, about 3,000 hectares, whatever that is in your American metrics. It's a lot and it's not a lot, but it's has been given back to the communities, and nature is coming back. The trees are growing, insects, bees, wasps. Last year, Eric went to Colombia and he was stung by a wasp, and he's allergic. So, and he died again, and and he was saved again by the Kogis. So, and so he's been doing that for all these years, and now the new project we're working on, and I'm working with him on this project, is that he has the conviction that the Kogis can help us to revive the memories, our own memory about our lands, about our relationship with nature, which we have completely lost, and help us to take care of our lands. And because they are specialists of, they are born ecologists. And so we've been organizing a dialogue between scientists and Kogis. And that picture was taken in Switzerland. It's not in Colombia, it's in Switzerland, on the mountain, the glacier, that's the source of the Rhone River. It was taken in October last year. We had 5 Kogis came in Switzerland and France for 3 weeks along the river Rhone, which is very polluted. It's a very important river in Europe. To ask the Kogis how the first time they came out of their own mountains in Europe, and to discuss with our scientists and experts about the situation of this river and what has to be done. And so we're organizing this dialogue and bringing up a laboratory, which we call Chihuahua Lab. Chihuahua Lab is to test new practices to regenerate our own territories with the help of the Kogis. That's it. Thank you.
You know, every once in a while you find an accidental explorer, somebody who, discovers a passion later than most of us have. So, Marie-Célie, we're going to bring you into this cult, this tribe. So, Satish, so you were the first class of, yes, if you saw the publication, which you'll all get today with your pictures and bios and stuff like that, our very first class of EC50, on the cover was Satish. So, Satish, I'm so happy to have you back.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, my name's Satish. As Richard said, I was part of the first class, and it's amazing getting to meet and interact with 50 new amazing people every year. So if you're a new class this year, definitely come back, meet new people next year, and kind of connect. And also, one of those big things, because everybody's spread out throughout the world, so it's a good opportunity to try and meet people and move around when you're traveling different places. There's always this kind of EC50 community. I met 2 EC50 people at my new field site in Sri Lanka when I was out there earlier this year. So it was a great opportunity to meet them and see their work as well in person. So I work actually on human-wildlife conflict, particularly with elephants right now. And my work focuses kind of on multiple different aspects. Before I was doing a little bit of work with the Smithsonian in Myanmar on elephant personality and how we can look at human-elephant conflict in a new light, and maybe how different personality types might judge how elephants interact with humans. And now I'm working at UCSD with some elephants in Sri Lanka and in Thailand. And we work with local communities and farmers on ways to find mitigation methods and kind of de-escalate the conflict there. So particularly in Sri Lanka last year had the highest level of conflict for human-elephant conflict. So they had about 400 elephants killed and about 200 people killed due to this conflict. So it's definitely a pressing issue, and it's increasing as populations kind of expand and kind of develop in these like crossover spaces between wildlife and humans. And one of the big things that we're working on is trying to figure out, you know, what are the points where humans and wildlife can kind of meet and interact in a safe way, and how we can kind of work with local communities in order to kind of find those intersections. And one of the big things as well is that, like, when we're talking about things like climate change and economic crisis and things like that, those things affect people very deeply, but it also affects wildlife. So looking at kind of how these intersections between humans and wildlife living in the same space and how they use that space can kind of develop and kind of create a mutual understanding of, like, between people and wildlife about how, you know, you're both using the same landscape and how the use of this landscape can kind of be more shared and equivalent. Right.
There's a couple more chairs here. I'm just going to throw some chairs here so I don't feel just throwing them out there. Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, here we go.
Hi, everybody. And my wife is here and say, talk in your natural language to talk with emotion. And thank you, Lili, from Brazil Foundation. Eu estou muito feliz de estar aqui nesse momento. Thank you, Brooke, Richard. Eu tenho uma história com a natureza que ela começa...
Do we have, here, it works.
Eu trabalho no Pantanal e é importante que todos entendam, é a maior área úmida contínua do mundo. São 140 mil quilômetros quadrados, é quase 4 ou 5 países da Europa.
So he's explaining, I don't know if you've been to Brazil, it's an area where it's called the Pantanal, which is the largest extension of sweet water in the world, and it's about 140,000 square kilometers, and which is equivalent to 3-4 countries in Europe.
Então, depois da Amazônia, é a segunda maior biodiversidade. São mais de 700 pássaros, mais de 100 mamíferos, pelo menos 400 espécies de peixes.
After the Amazon, it's the largest diversity. We can share. After the Amazon, is the largest biodiversity in the country, with about what are the numbers again? 400 types of fish, 700 types of birds, more than 100 types of mammals.
E minha relação com esse lugar começa quando eu era um jovem tenente da Polícia Florestal e as áreas foram invadidas por caçadores. Durante 10 anos, nós combatemos de maneira muito intensa um combate onde eu perdi soldados, tomei tiro, e cerca de 3 milhões de jacaré foram mortos, pelo menos 1.000 onças pintadas e pelo menos 2.000 araras azuis foram traficadas.
Translation is easy, but remembering all the numbers, not so much.
Oh,
So his relationship with the area, he's from there, but he started as he was a environmental police, and he worked for 10 years as an environmental police and had to fight, and he's been shot. He lost some colleagues fighting illegal poaching, illegal fishing, trafficking of animals, and he has witnessed the killing of how many crocodiles?
3 million crocodiles, 1,000 jaguar,
Jaguars and
near 2,000 blue macaw in the traffic.
Okay.
E, passado 10 anos, nós iniciamos uma outra fase quando conseguimos controlar a situação, eliminando a caça e o tráfico.
So after 10 years, they managed to control the trafficking and the killing of the animals.
E hoje nós temos um total controle da região e criamos uma organização, o Instituto Homem Pantaneiro, que é composto por cientistas, policiais florestais, brigadistas que ajudam a proteger esse lugar.
So he created the Institute of the Pantanal, it's hard to translate, Homens Pantaneiros, and they have a team of environmentalists, policing, firemen also to control, and it's not only protecting the animals, but also protecting the communities.
E nós conseguimos criar o maior corredor de biodiversidade do centro-sul do Brasil, que são 300.000 hectares, onde nós temos uma população de pelo menos 100 onças pintadas que moram nesse lugar.
So they were able to build this bio corridor to protect all the plants and the animals, and it's the biggest one in the west of Brazil, and they have about 100 jaguars living on this environment.
E esse lugar recentemente foi transformado num sítio do patrimônio natural da humanidade pela Unesco.
And this area has been recognized by the UNESCO as a patrimony of
Então, eu estou muito feliz e quero compartilhar com todos que estão aqui, foram escolhidos como Explorer, porque nós temos 2 datas importantes na vida. O dia que você nasce e o dia que você descobre por quê. Quem está aqui sabe por quê.
Wow, that was amazing. So he said he's very happy to be sharing, to be honored here, to be sharing and meeting all of you. And he said there are 2 important dates in life. The first one is the date you were born. The second one is when you discover what are you here for.
Thank you.
And just a quick note on who nominated Angelo. Many of you National Geographic, Beverly and Derek Joubert. And I remember being with them, talking to them about the program, and they said, we have the real deal. And so when Beverly and Derek Joubert, say somebody is the real deal, then you know that they're a great candidate. So, thank you very much. Okay. Hi, Callie.
Thank you. Well, this picture is definitely one of the worst environments I've been in. But my name's Callie Broadus. I live in Washington, D.C., but I spend my time working with young people around the world, trying to help them create protected areas in biodiversity hotspots. I'm the founder of an organization called Reserva, the Youth Land Trust, and basically we started about 5 years ago almost. Around this one idea to create the world's first youth-funded nature reserve. It was sort of a splashy idea that we thought could capture a little bit of attention and prove that young people could work together on solutions to biodiversity loss, and kind of show young people that their only option isn't protesting. They can actually work together and really help solve some of these problems now. And to show world leaders that young people aren't going to wait on them to take action, because we need to conserve at least half of the planet in its natural state. And we're quickly bleeding out these really important natural areas. So my work primarily the last 5 years has been in Ecuador. We succeeded in our initial effort thanks to some incredible partners, Rainforest Trust and Fundación Ecominga. And we have contributed to protecting 2,269 acres of Andean cloud forest in the northwest of Ecuador. So anyone related to Ecuador here would love to talk to you. But I'm really excited to share that we have finally started our long-term dream, which is to create a network of these reserves around the world supported by youth. We're kind of in the background talking to Colombian partners to start our next rainforest reserve. So I can't really share anything about that, but would love to talk to anyone based there. But we are currently actively working with someone I met here through the Explorers Club. She's called Callie Wielenturf, and you may know her as the Young New Explorer Award winner for this year. So we are going to be joining forces and having youth work together with the Leatherback Project to use migratory pathways of sea turtles through satellite tagging to advocate for the conservation of the Pearl Islands and marine migratory corridors surrounding the Pearl Islands in Panama. So that's mainly what I'm working on. And please come find me if you work with youth or biodiversity conservation generally. Thank you.
Thanks, Callie. I believe we're coming down to our last four, so we're almost there. So.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you all so much for being here. It's an honor to share this space with such an extraordinary group. I'm Lucas Fiat. I'm a naturalist designer, visual artist, storyteller, and explorer from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. My main work takes place in the nights of tropical forests. When the sun goes down, it's time to gear up and prepare our minds and hearts for what we are about to witness. Together with my partner, Leolana, who is also an EC50, we run the organization Projeto Mantis, entering the vibrant tropical nights in search of new and rarer species of praying mantis. Sometimes they look more like plants than insects, camouflage as fresh or dead leaves, sticks, flowers, barks. 2 weeks ago, we just discovered a new moss mantis living in a magical cloud forest growing on white sand. Our work also documents the extraordinary wildlife biofluorescence exposed through pure ultraviolet light. In nature, reality and dreams come along. Last year, I led a month-long field work in Amazonia focused on imagination. Our expeditions always combines arts and science. As a graphic designer, I've understood the power of visuals and branding to leverage impact and promote awareness. I also collaborate with explorers across my country, tailoring fundamental science and conservation to be communicated in multiple media formats. I believe design can expand our perception and understanding of our planet. It evokes emotion, imagination, creativity, and awe. Feelings we all experience when exploring the wonders of our world. I hope to meet you all on this amazing weekend, and let's find ways to collaborate, either looking for new species or promoting art and imagination in science and exploration. Thank you.
Samuel? Oh, Samuel.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, I'm always glad to get to share these stories. And in these moments, I love taking the opportunity to ask you to just kind of imagine with me a different scape than the one that we're in. So if you could just take a sec, maybe even close your eyes, but I want you to consider a world that might be hard to imagine. It's a world where a disease has swept across the globe, forced the populace into isolation, and driven a lot of death and mayhem that people never expected. Now, I'm sure you're all following me because I'm talking about the pandemic that swept through populations of honeybees. What were you guys thinking about? There is actually a pandemic that has been destroying populations of honeybees driven by a disease that we knew was coming, and we waited for it to get here before we conducted any study of it. This disease is a parasitic mite called Varroa destructor, and as I began to research it as a graduate student, I found that our understanding of this organism was deeply flawed. We'd been saying for more than 70 years that this parasite was feeding on the bee's blood, and it led to us not being able to actually determine how all of these different diseases were actually impacting these bees. So I strolled in as a goofy graduate student and found out that they were actually liquefying the bee's liver and destroying entire populations of them by doing so. Now, this discovery really got me on a track of realizing when we don't actually investigate and understand these kinds of problems before they arrive in our country, we're trying to develop an emergency response plan while somebody is yelling, "Fire!" So I decided that I wanted to get a handle on these issues, and I recognized that every species of honeybee that exists in Southeast Asia. We have just one in the Western world. And yet, the vast majority of research that occurs on honeybees occurs in the West. By far, the least of it occurs in the region with the highest biodiversity, the region where every single disease of bees tends to emerge and then spread and cause pollinator pandemics. So I started leading expeditions into Southeast Asia in 2018, and it was an incredible experience to recognize that there was this wealth of indigenous knowledge all around that we have been ignoring. We've been ignoring so much of what comes out of these areas because these are developing nations. I don't know how we have gotten away with still continuing to use that term, but in addition to all of that, these areas are regions where people have been recognizing and dealing with these diseases for ages, and instead of us attempting to reinvent the wheel, we can further empower them to conserve these species and also learn from them how we can protect our own. So as a new pollinator pandemic is on the horizon, a parasite called the Tropolalaps mite has been spreading from country to country. When it arrived in Pakistan, within 10 years of its arrival, had extirpated all of the bees within their border, all the honeybees within their border. It was deeply disturbing. That parasite is on its way here, and I have been leading expeditions to better understand it before it arrives, and I am so delighted that you all have recognized the work that's occurring through my foundation as something that is worthwhile, and I really appreciate you being willing to listen to me ramble on about my love for honeybees and our need to learn from our mistakes. Thank you so very much.
Justin, and while Justin's coming up, I have to ask that question. Have any of you found your tribe? Anybody find your tribe? No one. I guess no one here. Justin, congratulations.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much. Sammy, my partner is a professional beekeeper. She's going to want to know all about this stuff, so we got to talk. And speaking of her, this is something that I'm just struck by. I was struck by it when we had our group meeting on Zoom, but also by hearing from all of my fellow EC50 people here. Robin said, if I had known about all these kinds of things that these people are doing when I was a teenager, it would have completely changed my life. I didn't know that those were things that people could do. And I think that we have an amazing opportunity as a group and with the club to do outreach to kids who are preteens and teens, to let them know of the amazing kinds of things, the creative solutions that people can come up with in their work and in their lives to make a difference. So I just put that out there. That being said, I'm a space archaeologist, and I'm actually, I guess, also representing my co-PI, Alice Gorman, who's also one of the EC50 this year. She's in Australia, so she couldn't be here. The two of us have been working to study the International Space Station as an archaeological site since 2015. I got started doing space archaeology when a graduate student asked a question, is stuff in space heritage? And it blew my mind. I never thought about this before. So if there are any students in the audience, ask questions. They can send your professors in whole new directions in their lives. So as soon as I thought about like Tranquility Base on the moon, I was like, yes, of course, this stuff is heritage. So we started working on that. And in 2015, when I saw that NASA doesn't allow social scientists to become professional astronauts, I thought, wait a second, what's going on here? They actually even explicitly called out archaeologists, which was kind of amazing to me. I couldn't understand why they were even thinking about us, but then also, what are they so sure they don't need to know from us? So I started to think about how we could study a space habitat as an archaeological site, and started to think about how we could use visual imagery to do that. I got Alice to join me, and so the two of us have been doing this project. We have studied visual displays created by the crew, the kind of thing that you'd put on your refrigerator door at home to express yourself. They do this kind of thing on the International Space Station. We've studied cargo coming back from the space station to understand, well, really how much their lives are governed by lists and procedures, but probably most importantly and most recently, we actually got the crew to do an archaeological study on ISS for us, where they took daily photos of 6 locations spread around the space station for 60 days. And we have recently finished documenting 2 of the 6 locations and learned things that nobody ever knew about how people live in a space station and how the expectations of designers and mission planners are not always met. People decide to do different things with the spaces and the equipment that they're given as they live in a space that's orbiting Earth. So we're looking forward to the future. We want to get trash from the space station because archaeologists love trash. There's all kinds of other things that we're looking to do, but I'll probably leave it there. You guys all probably are tired after all of the amazing discussions we've had, but wonderful to be here and so honored to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Congratulations. So the slogan we have is 50 people who are changing the world that the world needs to know about. So our mission, Joe and I, all of you, is to be able to amplify these messages. Recently, under the guidance of Richard Garriott and directors like Johnny Waters over there, we have now allocated the funds to have somebody who's going to just do social media and promoting on different platforms the work of all of you. So here's how it's gotta work. It's a little bit of a give and take because we're a little thin in terms of people who are able to implement on this side. We'd really love, in a very short while, to have you sending updates, sort of like your alumni magazines, and hopefully we can amplify you. And we have had unbelievable success in our first year's group. Some of the people, Cyan Proctor, who was one of our year 1, was actually piloted the first African-American woman to captain a spacecraft as a result of people seeing her as part of the EC50. So it's that third-party testimonial that we give you. So it's a work in progress, but that is our goal, is to promote all of you. Brooke Vejos, who I want another round of applause for. Please come up here. Come. So Brooke is going to give you sort of like a quick rundown of cocktail parties, photos at the dinner, and Sunday.
How about we do this? Anybody who's an EC50, stick around so we can take a photo of you guys and do a quick little huddle, so I don't have to be on the mic longer than I can stand. But and then after that, we're breaking for lunch. I think the caterers are just about ready for everyone to go dig into the refreshments.
First, right?
But photo first, and then we'll give you honor cords and pins and all of that nice stuff. So decoder rings, all of the stuff you need to know, secrets, club secrets. So yeah, stick around if you're an EC50, but otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you guys all find them as celebrity as I do.